Okay, so hopefully the intro just gave you enough detail, give you some food for thought, and we can get on with things now. Step one is what I spoke about initially, the ungluing of the surface area. Okay, so the more superficial stuff. So looking around, scanning for some kind of tightness around my ankles, anything that's not gliding well with the skin there, and then just using the ball just to hit down with a bit of pressure and just sort of pop away just to get things gliding again. You'll experiment with it, you'll get a feel. Okay, so you'll soon work it out, and it's quite simple and effective. Even better than that, if you've got the luxury of something you can use to kind of, I guess it's a little bit more like scraping it away in a sense, so it's not literally, this shouldn't be painful, and it gets it gliding really easily. This is an example using a tool for soft tissue from iAmTools. I absolutely love that, it's a really brilliant tool. You could use the outside edge of a spoon. That's what I used for a good year before I invested in a tool, and lots of people use that. Now I'm working on the actual, I've done the ungluing of the surface area, so now I can work on the actual trigger point stuff and the deep massage stuff. Okay, so this is where you can use a ball, you can use a foam roller, starting with the bottom of the foot all the way from the knuckles of the toes. The inside arch is always a tight area for me, could well be for you. Use different size balls, smaller and denser they are, the more intense obviously the massage will be, and you can get into some tougher tissue. There's lots of tough connective bands in the foot. You need to be pretty hard and firm to make any real change. You can use a foam roller, as I mentioned. This is a spiky rumble roller, so it's quite good for sort of separating out any glued up areas. You can also, quite effective, you can sort of slide your foot across the outside edge. Doesn't have to be, just happens to be that there's a roller for me to use. It could be the outside edge of anything. It could be a straight edge, it could be something that was metal, could be the edge of the base of an office chair, you know, like a kind of swivel chair or anything. Just play around and it will make the superficial part of your feet and a little bit of that deeper fascia feel pretty good, and just release it and pull it away where it's tight and stuck. Another idea, you could do the same thing. This is quite nice for especially if you're limited with what you've got available and there happens to be a barbell there. It's good for that inside arch, and it's great for rolling up and down. It's quite refreshing if your feet are hot, because often the bar will feel nice and cold. This is okay because it's my bar, but if other people are about to use it, they might not be best pleased. I'm sticking my bare feet all over it, but there you go. You can slide up and down, like in that example there. Lots you can do. Okay, so just some ideas. Now we've done the actual step 1 and step 2 of the principles. This is the next part now, where I'm using a band. Not the perfect setup, I've just literally anchored it down with a couple of heavy kettlebells. But you know, ideally if you've got like some sort of pole or something you can fix it around, that's going to be much better. The main thing is just to be able to get tension on the band, and don't use it to try and distract or stretch muscle. In this situation, I'm just using it to you know, create a little bit of a sort of diversional distraction on a joint, so on a joint capsule. So around my ankle, it just enables it to sit in place a little bit better somehow, and I just by that external pull from different directions means that I can get in places I normally couldn't reach. Keep your foot nice and flat on the floor, don't let it cave and roll inwards with the knee out to the side, and then you can stretch around and work on that mobilisation that'll improve your dorsiflexion and so on. Here I'm working on dorsiflexion, just knee straight to begin with, and then bending the knee forward with the toes up as high as I can on the wall. Wear a shoe trainer when you're doing that rather than barefoot. It just helps to grip properly, and that really works on the Achilles and the soleus as well as the ankle and that dorsiflexion range. Next I'm working on the heel cord, just the Achilles tendon, very tight area, really tough and strong on everybody just naturally. It's very difficult to break and do anything to that, and unless you've had years of kind of like bad movement patterns and stuff in there causing problems. I've had lots of major problems in the past, sort of basketball wise, with an unfortunate injury that ended up with it almost snapped in half. So I've had to work a lot, and now they're pretty damn good now with all this work I've been doing. Another example is using a ball, but when I try to use the ball there, because it's a lot smaller than the roller, I didn't have the space to play around with flexing at the ankle there. So I've just made a little platform with some weight plates. You could use like yoga bricks are good, like those spongy yoga bricks, just to elevate the ball so it's on a base. Great thing with the weight plates is obviously it keeps the ball from moving around, so you can move and the ball will stay relatively still rather than shooting off down the road. So by moving around, rotating, dorsiflexing, plantarflexing, that enables me to sort of tack down and pin down that muscle, and then the actual movement is what's unbinding the collagen fibres and freeing it up. So that's a perfect way to do it. I worked a little bit there just using the ball, digging in to my anterior tibialis, just on the front edge on the outside of my shin. It can get quite tight for lots of people, so you can work from your knee down to your ankle. Then I just sat back on my insteps, as you saw there, just alternating between rocking from side to side, and that just gives another good stretch for the shin and the instep. And then now what I'm doing is I started off sort of with my bum on the floor, sort of less intense, and now getting a little bit of opening up of my patella and my kneecap as well, is just putting the ball in between my my knee pit right at the top, really working on the very top of the gastroc as it comes up from your calf and then into your hamstring. Now I'm working on using a band, just to give you an example of a bit more of the distraction work, the mobility work, once we've freed up the muscle. So I'd already done a little bit of roller in on my hamstring, and now I'm working on opening up the range of motion. Okay, so I don't know if you can, it's probably not a good angle there, but yeah, you can just see there my my knee was bent and then I'm extending. Okay, so flexing and extending at the knee with the band to open up that capsule and give me a little bit more space. Another example of doing that here. So I'm kind of pulsing into that end range, the maximal end range, or even a new end range that I'm creating, rather than just staying in there forever and just hanging out. I'm getting some movement in there, getting some internal external rotation. I was a little bit tight there, so I've just kind of like veered off slightly now into playing around with that hip a little bit. So yeah, don't worry about that part too much if it all of a sudden looks very different. Okay, but you can do that. You can think, oh, hang on a second, and you can just sort of slightly go offside, work on something for a second, and then pick up where you left off. I find that the foam roller isn't brilliant for me with my hamstrings because they're pretty strong, and lots of jumping and lots of sprinting and stuff over the years. So I find the ball more effective. So I've got a ball under my hamstring right now. I'm working on internal and external rotation with a bend in my knee there, and then working on flexion and extension at my knee, which is great because that's good for helping me with that tightness and just also that movement in general. I do a lot of that internal and external rotation at the hip with my legs when my legs are actually flexed. So because I'm bending at the knee, it just changes everything, and that's always a tight area for me when trying to deep squat, overhead squat, anything like that that needs really good mobility. I find that my knees want to come in because they're basically just trying to avoid internal rotation. Okay, so now I'm working on my glutes. A sign, by the way, of not wanting to internally rotate and trying to avoid it altogether, if that's a sticking point with the squat, is you'll tend to want to automatically stick your toes out really wide. It's not always the reason, but it's often the reason. Okay, so working on my glutes with a roller, then getting more intense work there by using the small ball, the trigger point therapy ball, to really get in, sticking my leg over my other leg at the knee, just to really work on the glute medius and the TFL as well. Certainly the TFL is really good if you get that tension by doing the typical sort of traditional floor glute stretch where you bend your knee of your opposite leg and then stick your ankle over the top of your knee. Now I'm working on my hips, so starting off at the top of my hip and where it runs into my rectus femoris, and then rolling and gliding from side to side, so working from the front of the hip and then round into the glutes and the TFL. Good stretch from there. I want to work on some internal rotation of my hip now. Again, I mentioned earlier it's a bit of a tight area for me, so just working on a little bit of a tight spot there initially, but the setup isn't quite right there for me because my hip's further back than my knee, so my thigh isn't in good line. So now I'm straightened that up. I don't want my toes down, so I'm just going to move those so they're on the floor. Okay, and I'm using the kettlebell just to anchor my ankle, so my ankle stays outside of the line of my knee, forcing me to internally rotate. Otherwise it's going to ping out as it doesn't really want to be there. And the band distracting gives me that opportunity to work on some areas that I wouldn't normally reach. And then typical sort of, your standard Samson stretch or typical sort of hip flexor stretch where we bend one knee, other knee down towards the ground. You can have the band in different positions. You can be facing it, you can be opposite it, it can be pulling you from the side. It's just about using the bands, playing around and experimenting, creating some distraction to the joint. So whilst that's happening, you can then sneak in and work on some mobility. Play around, try different things, and you'll feel the band pulling from different directions will feel different to the muscle and give you different openings to play around with. Oscillate, move around in a circular motion, back and forth. There's no rules, just experiment and you'll get a feel for it. And then I've done the rest of my lower body now, so just finally working on my quads. I can move to the side and I can hit some adductors here. So some internal, external rotation. I'm working on flexion and extension of the knee. So I'm pinning down that quad, rectus femoris, my vastus, wherever you want to work. Great area as well is here. I'm working just above the patella, particularly good on the inside, where you can really get tight and pack down muscle above your patella there, and just flexing and extending. Great for the very bottom of the quad. Alright, so hopefully that helps. Just a few ideas, not the be all and end all. Read the article, that's all.